Say something again. Just say anything.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what the? Hold on. I don't know why it's coming out of this TV. Say it again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. This is strange. I guess it's not that big of a deal where the sound comes out of, but it's never done that before. Yeah, I have two monitors and it's coming out of my second monitor.
You have a Mac?
I have a PC, which is really weird. Whatever, it's not that big of a deal. Hold on. Let me get rid of this shit back. Let me pull this up, and I will be good to go.
Cool. Long night?
I mean, I was out watching the Cubs, but yeah, it definitely was after that. I mean, I came back drunk and tried to do a little work that I could have done last night, but I saved most of it for today. Yeah. I figured I was going to anyways, but I gave it a shot last night. I was like, nope, had more than I thought I was going to.
I'm probably pretty good. That's pretty good choice anyway.
Yeah. Sometimes I can get some stuff done when I've had a few, but that was more than a few. So I was like, all right, I'm going to bed.
There's definitely like a cutoff point where you can be still productive and like more productive than usual.
Yeah, exactly. And I crossed that line. 3-2 though. I hope they don't blow it again. Let's see. Where the hell is this week's? I'm looking for the target. Oh, here we go. All right, I got it.
All right.
Oh, shit's changed again. Like a lot of shit, but oh well.
We can
yeah.
We can talk about Rodgers because you highlighted him underneath anyway. All right. Ready to roll?
Yeah.
Cool. Welcome to the target and ownership percentage for week 7. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Ricky Sanders at R Sanders DFS. You took a look at running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends this week and talked about some ownerships and projected targets. Obviously, a couple guys we highlight on. Seems like there's a lot of kind of value opening up here throughout the week.
Yeah, it's a whole different picture now. I kind of addressed it on the Doug Martin tidbit that he might not play this week. We found out that Shady McCoy might not play this week. So all of a sudden, where it looked like early in the week we were probably going to spend up, Bell looked nice. DeMarco Murray looked like an absolute lock. He still is. Spencer Ware was looking nice. Now we've got some room to kind of switch our strategy around, where if Gillislee's starting at the absolute minimum on most sites, I think we got to use him. Jacquizz Rodgers is probably a top 10 back in this matchup. That's why I liked Martin. I definitely think I like Rodgers equally as much, if only because of price here. There's a lot to like at running back this week.
Yeah, there definitely is. And kind of looking at the more expensive options, Le'Veon Bell, obviously missing Big Ben, but you're not really worried about how that offense is going to flow just because Bell's going to be the workhorse.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary in cash anymore. I mean, at the beginning of the week, I was constructing lineups. I was like, I guess you could. But, the stats suggest that everyone in this offense pretty much gets worse without Big Ben. And the same holds true for Bell. It's not really that severe, 18 fantasy points instead of 20 and a half kind of thing. But, it's enough where he's priced at 15,000. He's almost priced out now. Whereas, if it's performance is going to fall a little bit, we'd rather spend up for the receivers who have their number one quarterback who are in their, optimal position. Le'Veon Bell still viable for tournaments, still is going to see a ton of work. We expect that. We're just not sure how effective he's going to be.
And I think with all the value kind of opening up, I think that should drop Bell's ownership down quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think a lot of what people are going to do now is use those cheap backs to go expensive elsewhere. I think we're going to see more Gronkowski than we would have. I think we're going to see more, of the top heavy in terms of pricing receivers. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Le'Veon Bell's ownership percentage just dropped with all these backs opening up.
And then kind of transitioning into another expensive running back, DeMarco Murray, kind of the safer pivot option. Obviously, you're looking at his workload, and I mean, really a great matchup against the Colts.
Yeah, this is the guy to play in pretty much all formats. I mean, I don't think there's a reason to stray this week. Lamar Miller last week was kind of the guy who'd been seeing a heavy workload but hadn't been able to get it done. And he sees this Colts defense and absolutely explodes. So, DeMarco Murray has been getting it done. He's been catching footballs, most importantly, against this defense that has been getting roasted by the receiving backs. I mean, we saw last week that Lamar Miller passed to the right side. He faked out about 6 defenders, ended up in the end zone on the left side. I mean, they've given up the league worst forced touchdowns to the position. 33 receptions, 346 receiving yards, and they give up a pretty healthy amount on the ground as well. So, like I wrote here, this matchup is the nuts for any running back. DeMarco Murray is one of the best running backs. So, he's not even priced as RB1. I think you got to use him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, Murray comes in as my favorite option, kind of, of the top tier. Obviously, you highlighted Doug Martin, but we're looking at Rodgers now, who's going to be starting. Obviously, a great matchup against the Niners, who are just horrendous against the run.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rodgers stands out as the back if you can only have one of them to use. I mean, Gillislee now is kind of on the brink. Shady McCoy practiced as of Friday morning, so it's looking a little more likely he plays. I still don't think he does, but Jacquizz Rodgers has the superior matchup in terms of, on paper. So I think that he's the one to run out there. The 49ers have been giving up 100 yards to pretty much every back since the first week of the season. So Rodgers was a guy who would have 30 rushes last week. I mean, they were not afraid to use him when he was all they had. So, Doug Martin being out probably means you're getting Doug Martin production from a guy who's significantly cheaper.
Yeah, definitely. He's a guy, I mean, I think in terms of pairing up with like a DeMarco Murray, I mean, you're locked in for mass touches in pretty good spots there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my thinking there. The question is then in your flex, do you go with a third back? And I think this week the answer, at least in cash games, is probably yes.
Yeah, definitely with all the ones that are out there. And I mean, really another one here with Spencer Ware against New Orleans. His appeal to me was a lot higher than it was, or it is now, just because of all the value that opens up. But I think in terms of ownership dropping, it might just a little bit because of the value guys here.
Yeah, he's kind of my pivot if, McCoy ends up playing, because I think there's, combinations you can use of, Gillislee and a higher price receiver, or if, need be, if McCoy plays, then you go back to Ware and you can still find yourself a decent receiver. I still really like this matchup. I'm really not that worried about Doug Martin. Jamal Charles. I think, I heard a few weeks ago that he's still not confident in that knee, and they're kind of using him like he's not confident in his knee. Where's the guy? He's the one getting the, old school Jamal Charles workloads with, Jamal Charles is kind of the Thomas Jones now. He's kind of the change of pace. I don't think they have any reason to, switch that up with the way Ware's been playing. And this defense gives up the most fantasy points to opposing backs. So, I've got no worries here. Kansas City is favored against New Orleans, which was interesting, and they're favored by a touchdown. And Ware's averaging, 5.3 yards per carry. They're getting him involved in the passing game. I mean, Ware is a stone cold lead pipe lock. The question is, are you going to be able to get more, these really cheap guys? Can you pair them? Or if you can only use one in Rodgers and McCoy ends up playing, then you got to kind of figure out other things, especially if you didn't play the Thursday slate and use, Ty Montgomery or Meredith or someone you already locked in.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, this week there just does seem to be too many options at running back, which we don't usually get to or say too often.
Exactly. And we'll get to this next guy who I think in tournaments is going to have no ownership whatsoever, and I think he's got a pretty high ceiling.
Yeah, and that's Duke Johnson. And as you kind of said, in terms of ownership, I doubt there'll be much of any.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing the last few weeks the kind of transition to, okay, we're just going to pound the ball with Crowell in games that they're competitive to, we're on our third string quarterback now. We're playing from behind a lot. The game flow's going in the way of Duke Johnson. I mean, he scored his first career rushing touchdown last week. Guys on pace for almost 1,000 total yards from scrimmage. And they're going to be playing from behind against Cincinnati. I really like the Andy Dalton, A.J. Green combo this week. I think they're going to go off. I think, there's going to be plenty of points scored from this Bengals offense. So the Browns are going to be playing catch-up. And when they're playing catch-up, Johnson can get involved. And it's only a matter of time until he breaks like a 50-yard touchdown. I mean, he's too explosive not to. I know the offense kind of sucks as a whole, but still, this is a very productive player. The fact that they gave him, the touch inside the red zone was very encouraging because that's usually Isaiah Crowell territory. So I really like Duke Johnson this week. I think he's going to come under 5% ownership.
Yeah, I definitely do too. It's a very contrarian play, and I think it's certainly one with the chalky backs kind of opening up to kind of pivot away from. And then we kind of dive into wide receivers here. Obviously, a lot of pay-up options that probably going to be used quite heavily because of all the value at back. And Julio Jones comes in as kind of the first one you talk about here.
Yeah, he kind of strikes me as the DeMarco Murray of receivers with all this value. It's you've got all this money to spend. You got to spend it on the best. And as much as I like A.J. Green this week, I think Julio Jones is the guy you got to spend up on against a banged-up San Diego secondary. We just saw him go off. Him and Matt Ryan go off against, Seattle. Matt Ryan went off against the Broncos. So this offense is clicking on all cylinders, and Julio Jones has kind of proven, we saw it against the Panthers, that my theory now is, if a top receiver is not facing a top corner, he can definitely go off. And against a susceptible secondary, this is a matchup where Julio Jones most certainly should go off. So I think you're going to see a lot of Matt Ryan. I think if you're paying up for a quarterback, you got that extra salary, he's the one. But if not, go with Julio Jones anyways. I mean, he's the true wide receiver one, especially with, Landry Jones thrown to Antonio Brown now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He comes in for me as number one as well. Although, A.J. Green, really tough call in terms of kind of ranking them. Joe Hayden may or may not play this week. Obviously, I think either way, he's looking like a pretty good play.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play, first of all, but even if he does, it's going to be banged up. And, this defense is pretty susceptible if he doesn't. I mean, we saw last year AJ Green against a pretty similar defense go for 128 and a touchdown. I think you can expect similar this week. I mean, especially if no Joe Hayden, and the fact that he injured his groin, they said he was week to week. I think it takes him more than a week to just get healthy. So I don't think he's playing. I think AJ Green's going to be free to roam then. None of these other corners scare me at all. Again, top receivers against non-top cornerbacks, use them.
Yeah, no, I definitely like this one a lot. And Allen Robinson, this has been the guy I can't really quit. And this is the week, as you kind of said it, make or break against this Oakland secondary. What do you think about it in terms of ownership now with him in kind of comparison to the other receivers here?
I think it's going to be lower, but I think a lot of people are still buying into Allen Robinson. I think rightfully so in this matchup against the Raiders team that's allowed the most yards to opposing receivers, which is really what Allen Robinson needs. I mean, we've seen him score 3 touchdowns in a 2-game stretch, but what we haven't seen is him exceed 72 yards receiving. So if he's facing a defense where teams have been beating these corners consistently, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to see our first 100-yard game. Allen Hurns is banged up, and this secondary is not very good. So if we can't get a monster performance from Allen Robinson this week, it might be time to just stick a fork in this whole Jaguars offense. But I'm a believer in him. I think he's legit. I think has all the makings of a young Dez Bryant. I just think that Bortles has been a little inaccurate. He dropped the touchdown. There just has been something up through these first 6 weeks, but it's something that should be fixable, and it should be fixable this week.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this could be a turning point in really their season to get on a stretch. I mean, they still have a lot of division games where they can get on pace and kind of get back to where they were last year. You talked about Cameron Meredith, but I don't think a lot of us want to dive into that situation anymore because it bums a lot of us out.
Yeah, the wonderful Brian Hoyer injury that ruined everything. Oh, my God, Bad Barkley was bad.
So we could skip him. We'll talk about Tyrell Williams, kind of looking for a little comeback time with Phillip Rivers going up against Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the update on Travis Benjamin, but it still doesn't really matter that much. I mean, Atlanta has been a good team because of their offense. Their defense has been susceptible. They kind of been the bend but don't break of this year, which is what San Diego wants to be, except they break every week. But Tyrell Williams, to me, is clearly the top guy to own in fantasy. He's had some quiet weeks. I mean, last week against Denver to be predicted. But I think against a beatable Atlanta secondary, he moves around the formation. Trufant kind of moves around the formation. I think we'll see plenty of Williams matched up against favorable matchups. So, I mean, 9th most fantasy points allowed from this Falcons defense. He's just 4,400 on DraftKings. I don't think he's necessarily a cash option, but for tournaments, I mean, this is a guy who we've seen go, for a touchdown and a fair amount of yardage this year. Phillip Rivers is going to be constantly throwing, especially if they get behind. So Williams is a solid option for me.
Yeah, I'm looking at the game flow this week, and there are a couple of options I like on the San Diego team. One of the tight ends that you highlight, who we'll talk about in a little bit, is one of my favorite plays. But going into tight ends, Rob Gronkowski, and as you kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show, that you're expecting his ownership to kind of take a jump now because of all the value backs that opened up.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot more sense now. I mean, if you're looking for spots to pay up for and you like these value receivers, which, there are some. I like Tyrell. We didn't mention Pierre Garçon, who I think if you're going cheap at receiver is a cash option. But let's say you're going, 2 very, very cheap backs. You've got the salary. Spending down at tight end seems to make more sense in cash this week. But in tournaments, it is hard to ever argue against Rob Gronkowski, who's the best tight end in the game. He showed last week that he's back. Brady's back. It's hard to argue. Regardless of matchup, I don't even look at it anymore with Gronkowski because he can get it done every week.
Yeah, no, he definitely can. He looks like he's back with Brady there. Travis Kelce, probably the Chiefs' most frustrating player, him and Macklin. And as you kind of stated, I mean, they've had elite matchups over the last few weeks here. And, targets, I think it was, 3 for Kelce last week. So it was a little bit difficult to kind of take in, but gets another great matchup this week.
Yeah, I think both Macklin and Kelce caught all 3 of their targets last week. So they couldn't be any more efficient. The problem is that Andy Reid just does not like to call passing plays if he absolutely does not have to. And I think with the Saints defense, it's very possible that he doesn't have to because they can be gashed on the ground. So we could see more of the same. But, you look on paper, this is a very, very favorable matchup. If Andy Reid does decide, once in the blue moon, there's a game that he likes to throw a bunch and target Kelsey in the red zone, I think he still has potential. He's still one of the better talents in the game. The question is he going to get the opportunity? So I think he's a tournament-only play for me, but he's a strong one because if they do decide to scheme him in, he should be schemed heavily in.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I mean,